No, you're absolutely
give them
right.
3 hours.
But it's a respect thing for everybody involved. Like, you don't want to be making high level decisions at 11 o'clock at night on probably an empty stomach. Like, not just you, but your client too. And they push this, and people make bad decisions when they get tired. We know this. So, and I would even say, like, listen, like, this is ridiculous. You're doing this at this time. This is how long you have. I think you're right. Like, 5 o'clock would be the absolute longest I would put that.
Yeah, I was going to give him 5 hours because I figured if you're presenting at 6, for example, 11 o'clock is the max I would ever give anybody.
Yeah, we've done like 10 o'clock was the last one you did. They presented. I think our irrevocable was 10 o'clock,
and they were slow because he was older and he had like his son helping him out, and she had to be there in person. Like, there was no DocuSign, so
yeah,
and even that
age,
it was
man.
like.
But at the same time, like,
it's pretty quick.
If you're an agent and you're efficient, even if you have like 15 offers, you can get through that within like 3 hours, like a couple hours, and then you might go to round 2, and then you make it. You make it quick.
So that's one of the things that I do is I actually just condense the offers into a spreadsheet, so that the seller can look at all of the offers for the things that matter instead of piles of paper. Mm-hmm. They can look at it and they can be like purchase price, deposit, closing date, conditions, and I also have mistakes. And so if there are mistakes on the offer, then I write out what those mistakes are. And then they can, and I tell my seller, listen, the reason why I put mistakes there is so that if we're going to accept this, we can make the changes. Right. But also you can decide whether or not this is somebody that we can actually do business with.
And it could break a tie too, right? Like it's like, well, this is a clean offer with no mistakes, and
like they did it right. I want to work with a professional that we know can get this to the finish line. Yeah. If this thing's riddled with mistakes, chances are they rushed it through, and they may not have taken the time to qualify their buyer. There's a lot you can read into mistakes in the offer. So that's why I kind of like, and I have that spreadsheet if you guys want to use that on any multiple offers. Yeah. It works great. And I also, if you're doing it digitally, you can share the Google Doc with your client. And so as like, if you send everybody back to improve, you can update it and they get it in real time. So they can see you actually updating the document, and they can see people like leads change. And they're like, oh, this is now the better offer. And then when you call, they're prepared for it. Right. So there's some stuff that you can do to speed up that process and make things better. And I think it's going to be really important now, because the money isn't going to be the only thing that moves the needle for us going forward.
It's going to be the terms, for sure.
Anyway.
Like in the States?
In the States. Right. And so right now, I don't know if you guys know, there's a class action suit there's like one group that's doing a class action suit, and there's another lawsuit of some kind, and I don't know American legal systems that much. But anyway, there's like 8 of the largest brokerages, like franchises in the United States, is right now being sued for mandating cooperating brokerage fees. This has been in the works for a while, and as we know, like whatever happens in the States tends to leak into Canada. Right. And so the idea of like this, what we're dealing with right now of cooperating brokerage fees, is going to probably go away at some point in our careers. Like in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, we're going to see this idea of a mandated cooperating fee disappear. It doesn't mean that there won't be a cooperating fee offered. I think that what we need to be doing going forward is really strengthening our conversations with buyers and sellers about what the value of a cooperating agent is. I think that this is really not telegraphed very well to the consumer. What it is that we do. Like, everybody thinks that we're like gatekeepers. We just have the key, and we can get them into the property. But what are all the other things that we end up doing for buyers? One of the where I start the conversation is there is only one way you can purchase an insurance policy when purchasing a home, and that's by hiring a real estate agent. It's the only insurance policy that you can purchase because we pay insurance for errors and omissions. We're trained to do this particular job, and if we make a mistake that negatively affects the buyer, they have a recourse. If they go direct and they are under a customer service agreement with the buyer, with the seller's agent, no protection, none. Buyer beware, 100%. So that's the first thing. Okay, and then there's like that 3-page list on the service schedule of all of the other things that we do. And I think that the biggest thing is the quarterback aspect, like making sure that your where you're getting your financing from actually checks out. Making sure that they not only understand but protect themselves, the difference between a pre-approval and an actual approval.
Mortgage commitment.
Mortgage commitment, right? Yeah. So there's a big difference between those things. Preparing people for how serious these documents are. Like when you sign this, you need to understand what this document is and that you're signing under seal. If you decide not to show up with a deposit check, too bad. Like you're still tied to this document, and so you are going to want to make sure that you understand what that document is. Do you like? It's been a little while for the three of us, but do you guys remember when? I mean, all of us. I remember the first time I looked at an agreement of purchase and sale. Do you remember? Like how were you like? Oh yeah.
Like so many things.
It's like English. It's just plain English, right? Yeah. Like, do you remember the first time you looked at an agreement of purchase and sale?
I remember the first time explaining the agreement of purchase and sale to like.
I remember I had to read it a couple times myself because it's written up by like the Treb lawyers or whatever that drafted all the clauses.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not very easy to absorb or just digest.
Yeah, all the fine print clauses for sure. You have to be.
Yeah, it's set up this way because it's legal. And when you simplify it, you take the teeth out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like
you could miss
you're
some
opening
of
it
those.
up to interpretation.
That's right.
Which is because you're interpreting it into plain language, right? So
right.
you're technically not.
So explaining what this actually means, and there are really only in an agreement of purchase and sale, there's really only 5 or 6 things that really matter, that you really have to dig in on. The rest of it. Probably, like it's, the OOFI, like the formaldehyde insulation. Like you could probably, like this is for formaldehyde insulation in this particular case. Like if it's there and they don't tell you, then you can go back on them. But they're saying it's not there. Next, right? That's not really a really important thing. Like a lot of homes that we sell don't have formaldehyde insulation. But indemnification. The difference between a client and a customer, like that stuff really matters. They have to understand, like, I have to follow your legal instructions. I owe you all of the fiduciary care that comes along with a client versus a customer. And so when people when they understand what the differences between those things are, all of a sudden our value gets elevated pretty significantly. You ever had a client go and talk to the listing agent while you're not there?
Yes.
Get an open house. How often has that worked in their favor?
Actually, not well.
I coach them. That's one of the first things I coach them on is like, especially if like, we're out looking at properties and I know we're going to come across an open house or something like that. I'm like, you hold your cards tight. Like, and it's kind of common sense, but people don't get it. I'm like, don't tell them what your budget is because that you lose all your leverage.
Exactly. They're not working in the best. Their client is the seller, so they're not working in the best interest of the customer, right? So you can't, even though they still owe you like integrity and honesty and all of that stuff, they're still working in the best interest of their. So it's like a conflict of interest.
My client walked into an open house and told them how much they loved the house and that they were going to make an offer. But they were nervous about the sale of their property. We had the best offer, and they didn't believe that they could
sell it, right?
They could sell the property. Right. They got nervous about that. When we did sell it, it was instant. But just zip it.
I had to tell a client once, don't show up in that car ever. Because if they see your car, can you bring?
I like your clients,
Can you bring the pickup truck next time? Because
Yeah, could you please?
Take public transit.
Because we come across this often enough where we get where we're having conversations with people and we're early in the process, and they are working with multiple agents. They see the value or the perceived value of more is better. So, what is it that what is it you guys are saying? First of all, are you coming across this?
Honestly, if we do, I just basically tell them like either you pick one or I'm not gonna work. It's complete waste of everybody's time.
Okay, but why? I think that they need the explanation because in their heads, they get all these people. They're going to see more properties. They're going to get more opportunities put in front of them. They see a value for this. Otherwise, why would they do it? And they probably don't understand what it is we can bring to the table when properly motivated.
Yeah, I think a lot of buyers are actually, they're scared to be locked in to a contract, I find. That's kind of like usually the pushback that we get. But I feel like if you, like even for us, like I like to actually go on a couple of showings before even signing any BRA so that they can see how we kind of operate and work and like the value that we bring, especially during showings. Because like when you meet with somebody the first time, you're going to be explaining all this stuff. But then as you go see properties, you can actually bring more value and your knowledge is actually in the property, like showing them like the mechanicals, like showing them this, showing them that, like why is this bad? Why does this affect value? So like there's so much like ongoing like learning that as you go. So like when you go on showings, you can actually show like, hey, these are the good things about a home. These are the bad things about a home. And like, this is how a home kind of operates and works. So like, there's a huge learning curve for like buyers. So like, I find when buyers actually see that you bring value, they're like, okay, this, like, I want to go with this person because they're bringing value to me, or they're knowledgeable, or they know what they're doing. They know what they're saying. Yeah.
I find, like, personally, I find, like, if I can get somebody into a meeting, they're going to leave that meeting realizing that they don't know nearly as much as they think that they do.
Right.
And that includes people that are doing, multiple deals a year that are probably investors and that do go direct to agents. When you sit down and you start explaining things to them about like the intricacies of different clauses and how you can use these things to your advantage, or even like if you're incorporated, we can actually make my commission a write-off. Did you know that?
As a buyer?
Yeah.
No.
But there's a special way you have to do that.
But only if the buyer's incorporated?
You have to be incorporated.
Okay.
And so what we can do is we can, in the agreement of purchase and sale, we can direct the lawyer, the buyer's lawyer, to pay the brokerage direct. So the seller gets paid the exact same amount of money at the end of the day. But the commission is redirected rather than going to the seller's lawyer and then to the buyer's lawyer and then to the brokerage. Or sorry, so it goes to the seller's lawyer and then to the brokerage. Our brokerage would invoice the seller's lawyer direct for the commission. So rather than doing that, it gets headed off at the pass. And the seller's or the buyer's direction is to pay out of the proceeds from their lawyer to our brokerage. Now it's their expense.
So you're representing the buyer?
I'm representing the buyer.
Right. And
so they can write that off. Do you think that's a value? Did I just provide value?
Yeah, for sure.
Huge amount. So like, and you guys have been in the business for a long time. You didn't know that. So like, what makes like these guys, like there's all kinds of little tidbits and things that we can bring to the table that even if you're experienced, you don't transact as often as we do. You don't take the courses. I'm a student of the game. Like I sit on my stationary bike and listen to podcasts about how to do this job better. I doubt that there's too many developers that do that. So that's the value that we bring. Like let's really kind of think about like what is the reason why somebody should work directly with us? What do we bring to the table?
Right.
It starts with the insurance policy, the fiduciary care, and then all of these other like added benefits. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we're doing is the buyer representation, or the ABR course, accredited buyer representative course. This is where you learn how to actually do this thing, like where you save your buyers this commission. And so I did this I've done this with clients before. It's difficult because the other side doesn't know what you're doing.
Right, you have to explain it to them. And
Many times.
Well, usually if people don't understand something, they don't like it. Yeah.
They think that you're picking their pockets and that you're getting extra money, and it's like, no, man. Like read the clause,
Right.
and it's like you're buying a $1 or $2 million property. Gets like that's a value.
Right.
Like your tax savings are like
And
30, 40 grand.
Does it get minus right off the purchase price, so it lowers the purchase price?
No. So you still, like, everything goes forward, and what you do is on the confirmation of cooperation and in the Schedule A, it says that the buyer is going to pay the buyer's commission with the proceeds of the funds. I have very specific clauses and where to put them in. So if you ever come across this, like, we'll do it right at the time.
Right.
But the easiest way is just go to the ABR course, and Barbara will tell you exactly.
So is this how they're doing? So for example, I'm the seller, you're the buyer, and then, for example, the seller's paying the commission, so I'm paying my brokerage, but I'm not paying the brokerage to pay your brokerage. I'm paying directly to your brokerage.
So what happens is, like, typically how it would happen is, I'm the buyer, you're the seller. So there's a deposit that's held by the listing brokerage.
Right.
And then there is, on closing day, I'm going to show up to my lawyer with this $1 million, which is the purchase price minus that deposit.
Right.
So even if that deposit is $200,000, I don't care.
Right.
Doesn't matter to me. What's going to happen is I'm going to bring that money to my lawyer, and then the lawyer is going to break off my commission right at the start, plus the HST, and write a check to Remax Hallmark. That money would go straight to Remax Hallmark. The remaining amount then would get sent to the seller's lawyer, and then the listing brokerage would take the listing agent's commission out of the deposit, and the rest of the check would go to the seller.
Right. The lawyer's taking the buyer's agent's commission before they even transfer the funds to the seller's
That's
lawyer
right.
on closing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's the seller is not paying the cooperating brokerage fee.
I see.
The seller's lawyer.
You're
the
basically
buyer's
just
lawyer.
redirecting
Some of the
funds.
proceeds
You're just
of the
redirecting funds.
sale.
It's
the
just
same-
where it comes from
Right.
matters.
Right.
Because that lawyer, the seller's lawyer, is not my representative as the buyer. And so I can't write that off. It was paid to me through a third party that I'm not in control of. And one of the things that I always tell every client, buyer or seller, listen, if this agency relationship isn't working for you for whatever reason, and we can't remedy it, you can get out of this at any time. I don't want to work with you if you see that there's a major problem that can hold you hostage. Put it right in the service schedule, and it becomes part of any listing or buyer agreement. It sets expectations for communication. It sets, it outlines all of the different things that we may or likely will do in a transaction, so that you can start to get people to understand, like, here's the value. Given the opportunity, like if somebody put a BRA in front of me, if I was like, knew what I know now, but I wasn't an agent, and they were like, just sign that, we'll get right to work, I'd be like, no way. Like, this doesn't help me at all. It only helps you as the agent. And so as soon as you add a service schedule to it, changes the dynamic entirely. All of a sudden there's an out. There are expectations set, and it outlines all of the different things that are essential to a clean process.
Right.
So if you haven't reviewed it, like, take a look at it and like edit it, change it. It's there for you to help you. But I basically just I populated that thing. I spent a couple of days just brainstorming, it was like 2.5 pages, fine print, all the different things. I think it will help you a lot to sort of explain that value.
So you just put like a schedule. Put like a
Are you
schedule
talking about
A
buyer rep?
on the buyer rep.
Oh,
Yeah, I also have a service schedule for listing as well. Like if I'm getting pushback on the listing,
Yeah, we always explain to them too. Yeah, like this is the length of our contract, the term of the the length of the contract for our representation. But exactly, if you're unsatisfied and for whatever reason, and we cannot remedy that situation, then we can cancel this contract at any time. Because we explain that to our clients. Exactly, you don't want to hold anyone hostage, right?
Yeah.
We want to work with people that want to work with us. And we know what we can do, right? We know what service we can provide. So we're never going to force people to stick out the contract if they don't want to.
the other thing that I would highlight, if ever you're having this conversation with people, did you know that the majority of the lawsuits in real estate, majority of the lawsuits come from buyers? I was a little bit surprised by that too, because like I would have thought like there's more that could go wrong representing somebody's sale. But
maybe during like
there's a discovery period and there's like the stuff,
2022, like when people were overpaying and then they'd be like
absolutely, or they couldn't get their financing, and then
so let me read something to you.
Like an agent won't even be able to explain like, hey, if you, because they say they're in a bidding war and they're like, I want to bid this much, but like, yeah, okay, you can say you bid this much, but if your lender doesn't appraise at that value, then you got to come up with that difference, right?
I got a message from our ads this morning, and somebody like, this is happening to people. Mm-hmm. That house, I looked at it, and I think that bank appraisal in March of 1.1 was generous. Probably
back in March,
million, just over $1 million. I'm going to say that it's at least $50,000 to $75,000 more than what they probably should have got in March of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's starting to catch up on people, and the most vulnerable are the ones that are falling now. The smart people are getting in front of this before the banks start taking control here, because then it gets really expensive.
That's crazy.
Because we've had these conversations before and the default rate has been so insanely low. But it's starting to turn now that people are coming up for renewals and stuff? Or?
People have been putting Band-Aids on this, and they've been making things work.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to get, like, it's just getting a little bit outside of their ability to be able to control it. Mm-hmm. And they've made deals with the bank.
It's those people who bought in March 2022 that are really...
They're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble right now.
But if you think about it, like, if you actually break down the numbers, like, how many people actually bought? Like, how many sales were there? Like, 9,000, 10,000? In the grand scheme of things, it's actually not a lot.
Well, it's about 4 months worth.
Right, and it also depends if that person got a fixed rate. They're good, right?
Yeah.
If they didn't, it's the people that bought and didn't. That stayed with the variable. That didn't convert exactly.
Yeah.
So, and in any case, this is some stuff that's kind of coming, and it's starting. Like it's starting to be quite serious for some people. Not just like from the on the bad side, but also on the good side, where people are like, "This is my opportunity to get into the housing market. If I don't do something soon, I'll likely miss this particular opportunity." And I think that we have we've got a bit of a window here. I don't know how long it's going to last for, or even if it's that window might open up more. There may be more opportunity. If you've got people looking for condos, I don't think that there's any great urgency here. Like there's time to watch and assess.
For freehold, though, I think it's time. It's like I think
the clock is ticking.
We're at the bottom, near the bottom. I think it's like.
I think the clock is ticking.
Just with the buyer demand and everything else, it's kind of.
And helping people solve particular problems. It's not necessarily like if you want to sell your house or whatever. Like one of the biggest things right now that I would be aware of is that people's spaces are contracting. Like families are getting the kids are getting older, more stuff's coming into the house, and maybe upsizing isn't really in the cards for them. So I think like a really good message right now for a lot of people is like, have you considered making more out of the home that you're in right now? Because we can have some conversations.
Renovate your basement. That's what I just did.
Renovate your basement, maybe add an addition, knock out a wall, you know, like make the space you have more friendly. Like how many times have you guys gotten a house ready for sale and they're like, man, I didn't even know I liked this house.
No,
Happens all the time.
all the time. They're always like, I want to live here now. I'm like, whoa, whoa.
But what if you offered that like initial sort of like, here's if listen guys, like love you, don't want you to move if you don't absolutely have to. Would you like us to give you our 2 cents on how you can make this house more livable for under $20,000, less than your land transfer tax for a move? Is that something you'd find of value? So it's not necessarily just selling real estate services the way that people think about real estate services, but there's more that we can offer. It doesn't mean necessarily a payday for us,
No, yeah.
but what it does mean is like we have a particular skill to make homes better so that they attract more money. So what if you just did the first part? Is that worth having a conversation?
Like, I love thinking about it in terms of, it's not like we're just transacting. Like, we're not, our business isn't to buy and sell real estate. It's like, I think our business should be advising people on how to build wealth with real estate, right? Whether it is to sell or not, or maybe how can you keep your house and build additional wealth that way. Like, I love like building people's real estate portfolios, you know, like, and that means, yeah, maybe you're not going to sell your house. Like, you know, we're not going to be able to sell your house for you, but that's not our primary business, right? Our primary business is to help you build wealth with real estate.
Yeah, our job is to help people, whatever that might be.
Right.
And maybe it is to help you maximize a profit and buy at the best advantage. And that's like that's where we make our money for sure. But if I properly advise somebody and they get, you know, they make more out of their house, the repeat referral business is reward enough. Thank you very much. Like, please tell people what we are able to bring to the table. Like, that's where the power of this business is. It's in the relationships.
Absolutely, because like there was one client a long time ago. He actually asked like, "Hey, they had a problem where I think something like they wanted to actually move like a powder room. It was like, in a weird spot in the main floor. And they wanted to do a reno. They actually were thinking like, hey, like I want to sell, but let's see. So we actually ran the numbers with him, and just a closing cost alone, it was like 70 grand. I'm like, honestly, if I were you, I would probably say you have the 70 grand just put into your home instead of actually transacting. Like, obviously sold and bought, like I would have benefited for sure, right? Because I'm getting a sale. But at the end of the day, like there is a cost to transact in real estate. So like they actually chose to renovate their home.
Like, does this make more sense? Like, does
Yeah.
this option make more sense for you?
Yeah.
And if it does, that's great.
But exactly what you're saying, repeat referral. He actually ended up like
Sure he
his,
did, yeah.
his parents actually end up using us as realtors, right? So like
Yeah, and they're
it's
great
not
advocates,
it's not always
you know?
about like making that sale. Like I think truly having the best interest for that person at that time is like, hey, these are your options. Like just lay it out on the table. Like these are your options. Like you go this route or this route. It's entirely up to you.
And that goes back to what you were saying about like, why would someone use you as an agent, right? What value do you bring? And I think that if we bring that value, it's like, why wouldn't they go with us? Because it's like they trust us, they trust our opinion. Like, we're not just trying to make the sale, we're trying to, you know, see how we can help, right? Like, how can we help? You know,
I think trust is like the biggest factor for like everybody. It's hard.
For
It's hard.
anyone. For
Yeah, it's
anyone
hard
that
to
you work
trust.
with.
Like even like a car mechanic, right? You have to be able to trust. Like I think in any industry, it's like all about trust. If you trust that person to actually truly have your best interest,
Yeah, you have like a client for life.
Yeah.
Like if you have a contractor that you trust, like any kind of professional that, like, if we don't have the information and we want to go to someone that you can trust their word and, like, you know, it's a huge value for sure.
And that's, yeah, so I think like that's kind of the message and what I like the term trusted advisor. I'm going to advise you on what the proper pathway is for you to win here.